Entertaining, informative, and educational. Inspiring content that makes a difference.
This is the Maximus Troy Publications Broadcasting Network.
Join the Academy. The Breeders Academy proudly presents Bred to Perfection with Kenny Troiano, a show for serious breeders.
Whether you are looking to create a new strain or simply improve an old one, you have come to the right place.
Daddy, I want more chickens.
Oh, boy.
Now, here's your host, Kenny Troiano.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bred to Perfection. My name is Kenny Troiano, and this, my friends, is the podcast devoted to helping you become a better breeder and taking your strain to the next level. That's right, my friends. It doesn't matter if you are brand new to breeding or you've been breeding for many years. There is something all of us can do to improve our fowl for future generations.
Dad, when I asked for an alarm clock, this is not what I had in mind.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Bred to Perfection. I'm Kenny Troiano, founder of the Breeders Academy, and today I'm with my co-hosts Nancy and Frank Bradley. How you guys doing?
Hey, everybody.
They're good. I have that for alarm.
Do you really? That's actually one of my chickens.
We was at a service station, and I was getting fuel, and it went off for some reason. The last trip we taken to the Smokies, and some woman behind me, she goes, "Is that a real chicken, or is that on your phone?" And I was like, "No, it's on my phone." She goes, "Oh, okay."
I should do that. I forgot that I can actually do that because that's one of my chickens. Maybe I should put that on my phone. Tony knows how to do all that.
Too.
Yeah.
I actually have one of my customers on my route. That's their doorbell is a rooster crowing.
Really?
Love it. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I was talking to Tanya today because we had just got done feeding and went to the store to get coffee to wake me up. I was not dragging today, so we went and got coffee. So her and I were talking about the chickens. I see this every year. They get better and better every year. But it was really funny. I was walking around feeding and watering, and I'm just looking around from a distance. They're all in their pens, and I'm like, oh my God, just the silhouettes alone. It's amazing how well they're turning out and how much better they're getting. And then you look closer and the detail in the features of the bird, whether it's the type, the conformation, and all the fine points of the bird, they're really coming around. And Tony goes, I'm so used to being around good chickens that I don't know what a bad chicken looks like anymore. And I go, wow, that's a nice compliment. And then Frank goes, if you had a bad chicken, she'd see it because she's so used to seeing the good chickens. Because I don't get that many bad chickens anymore. I cull them when I see them, but I don't get them as much as I used to.
Yeah, but you could go to someone else's yard that had some poor quality fowl, and they would stick out just like a blinking light. You don't think that until you actually see them, but when you do, they just jump out at you.
Surprise, we have this chat room that we put together for the members. It's actually called the Breeders Academy Groups page. It's on Facebook. So a lot of the members are getting on there and they're communicating with each other and getting together. And I happened to glance at it, and somebody had posted a picture of one of their birds, which was half mine and half whatever. I can't remember what he said was in it, but I don't know if you get a chance, Frank, check it out. And I was like, oh my God, that bird looks just like mine. The resemblance of my birds was so close. It was just a stag, but it was amazing how close it was.
That's as good genes coming out in it.
That's the thing, too. You get a better result when you're crossing, especially two families that are pure. Inbred, selected, they're uniform, consistent, they can repeat themselves. And when you put them together, you get such a better result. You do. But I was amazed when I looked at that thing. I go, that's my bird. But it was only half my bird, he said.
Like you said, especially if it's a good neck, it's going to just bring out the best in both of them. Great offspring. And we talk about this a million times. The better they are pure, the two families, the better offspring they make when you do bring them together that way.
And I did a coaching call with one of my members last night, and we got to talking about that on developing lines that you can cross and get the best results. So we were talking about the reciprocal, I can't talk over those. Can you hear those dogs?
Yeah.
Can you hear those dogs, by the way?
Yeah.
Can you?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Hey, You owe me one for last week too. Mine is outside the building here, and he was cutting up.
So it
He
was you.
going at it.
Because we were
Everybody
talking about that. I'm
their
going, where are those
business,
dogs
so I
from?
wouldn't even say anything.
Is that from outside the window or is that his dogs? I couldn't tell that time, but those are outside my window.
It was mine.
Yeah, that's distracting.
Yeah, it was mine.
Wow.
So I was like sitting over to the side trying to make it block it a little bit, but everybody went on about it. So I said, maybe they didn't hear it.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Yeah, I heard it when I was editing, but it was fine. It's just distracting when I'm trying to talk. But we were talking about the different breeding systems that you can use as far as creating a really good hybrid from two really pure families. And I forgot where I was going with that. But
I think this is going to be one of those shows.
yeah, it might be. I totally lost where I was going to go with that.
You know what? The listeners are fine with that because they're already begging to ask questions. They're like,
Really?
when can we start asking questions?
Well, I'm not ready for the questions yet until I get past some of the announcements and everything. In due time. In due time.
Yeah.
We'll just say, ready, set, go.
Ready. Okay.
Go.
But as far as that groups page, you do have to be a member. So when you go to sign up for it or ask to be invited, you need to answer the questions because unless you can show me that you're a member, show me your username, and I can match it up to a member and your particular membership, you won't be getting in. It is a closed group and it is just for the members. So make sure you do that. And if you are a member and you're not on that group, you can either contact me and I'll give you the link or go to one of my other Facebook pages and you'll see it there. I post it every now and then, but it's a really good place for the members to get to know each other. They could do it inside the website, but most of the time they're talking to me. A lot of you guys know I had a guest on the show recently, Rick Coast from the show Evolution Talk. He first had a podcast called Evolution Talk, and then he created a book under the same name, which they're both really good. The show's really good. The book's really good. If you're not into reading, he also has an audio book. I'm a big fan. I'm always listening to his shows. And I had finished my work and I saw that his show had popped up on my phone. I was like, oh, okay, I'll take some time and kick back and listen to the next episode. And this is what I heard, almost knocked me off my chair.
Before I kick off the show, I wanted to give a shout out to Kenny Troiano. Kenny had me on his show Bred to Perfection to talk about how closely breeding is to natural selection. Kenny has both a YouTube channel and a podcast, and they're both amazing resources if you're a breeder or are even considering becoming one. I touched on artificial selection on an earlier episode, but it doesn't scratch the surface. To find out more about what Kenny does, go to breedersacademy.com. I say all this not only because I enjoyed my time on the show with Kenny and Nancy, but also because this episode and the next few were inspired because of our conversation. So thanks, Kenny.
There is grandeur in this view of life.
Welcome to Evolution Talk with Rick Coast, an introduction to the oldest story ever told.
I thought that was cool that he recognized us and our show, and that some of the shows that he's going to be doing for a while were inspired by what him and I talked about, because we were talking about the similarities between evolution and selective breeding and natural selection and selective breeding. And every time we would go a little further into the outline, I'd bring up something. He goes, oh man, I got to cover that. Oh yeah, I got to cover that too. Yeah. It's going to be really neat to listen to the shows that he does for a while because they're going to be inspired by what we talked about. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. I listened to some of his shows as well before he come on the show. And that pretty much, that gave him a whole different direction that he could go in. I could see where he was excited about that.
Yeah, I am. I'm excited about it too because he really does his homework. He does a good job of researching the material and he puts it together in a really fun and entertaining way. And I talk about it all the time how I go into genetics and evolutionary biology and breeding, and I look for things that we can use in the improvement and creation of our strains, but then I'll go in there and I'll simplify the information so that it's easy to understand, because sometimes the way it's formed inside the books, it can be complicated and hard to understand or hard to implement. And I think it's really cool because I think that's what he does with his show, is he takes a topic like evolution, evolutionary biology, genetics, and he simplifies it for the beginner. Even certain college professors are using it for their curriculums. So that's how good the show is. But I was so happy to have him on the show. And like I said, I've talked to him, and as soon as I can come up with an outline, he said he's willing to come on. It should be fun. Get him on again. Hoping you can make it, Frank, for that one.
Yeah, hopefully. Because the last few that we had, the real good ones, it was always something where I couldn't make it. A couple of those that I really wanted to do, I just wasn't able to do for scheduling. But hopefully it'll work out on these next ones, hopefully.
Well, let me get into a few announcements. The Breeders' Academy is open for new enrollment, so make sure you join. I've been getting new members almost daily, so make sure to get in there before we close the doors. Once you get in there, I suggest that you start with the Start Here pages, but what you're going to get once you get in there is our Master's Class videos. You're going to have access to the Founders Program, our specialty courses, members' resources, our audio and video archives, and so much more. You're going to be able to do coaching calls with Frank and I. And then as a member, there's no such thing as falling behind or needing to catch up. You can go at your own pace and learn what you want when you want. It's a great reference for breeding. It's going to get you started on the right foot. Like I said, the Start Here pages are really good for that. And then you're going to have access to the Founders Program, which is my signature program. You can cancel anytime. I don't get very many cancellations. That's how good the website is. I was doing coaching calls, and every one of them was saying they're in for life. They're never going to cancel. They're going to be in there forever, which is really cool. So just go to breedersacademy.com to sign up. Also, make sure to subscribe to my Breeders Bulletin, which is our version of the newsletter. There you're going to get free tips, free ebooks, notification announcements to future events. Just go to breedersacademy.com. If you've signed up in the past but you're not getting the newsletters, join again, because I'm always adding new material and it just might have ran out. There's no risk and it's free. If you're looking for healthcare products for your birds, contact Peter Brown at First State Vet Supply. He'll make sure you get everything you need to take care of your birds. Just go to firststatevetsupply.com. Okay. Last week, we talked about Genetics of the Fowl by F.B. Hutt. And I mentioned his companion book, which is Animal Genetics. But I wanted to go a little bit further because I was looking at it the other day and I was like, as good as Genetics of the Fowl is, especially for chickens, this book is still pretty good. There's a lot of people that want to dismiss genetics, but the information you get from this really shows you how to breed them, how to improve them. It gives you insight into how they're going to turn out. I just think it's a big mistake when people play it off like that.
When you play anything off, the main thing is with anything, if you don't take something serious and you're trying to learn, just like we are with breeding, at some point you have to go to the science part of it and you have to believe in it and you have to know that this is going to work. It's science-based and I'm going to do this and just put your foot down and go to it. But if you've got hesitance about something, you're not going to do as well with it if you're in it to win it, so to say.
Yeah. A lot of his books were written for agricultural students. And you're going to classes right now working on your doctorate. And you said last time that they're still using it today.
Not only him, there's other ones way, way back, these old dead man books back in even the 30s. They're still using it that far back. A lot of those guys had it figured out. And I keep telling Kenny, I said, maybe one of these days, maybe they'll look back on us and say, these guys had it right when everybody else wasn't jumping in on it. They should have been jumping in on this and getting it while they could. But hopefully one day they'll be saying that about us.
That would be so cool.
Yeah, Nancy talks about that all the time. I keep telling her the only thing working against us is the fact that a lot of my material is behind a paywall. You have to be a member to see everything. And what we talk about in the show is so little compared to what's actually in the website.
Too, we're going to have a lot of members out there that's going to be spreading the good word too and breeding their way. And 40 years from now, where it's going to be the Founders Program, but just by itself only.
Yeah.
I'd love to be around in 100 years just to see.
We may never see it. If that ever happens, we'll probably never see it. That's the shame of the whole thing.
Hey, artists' paintings are usually no value until after their death. So that may be where we're at, guys. Who knows?
Yep. You could kill me off and the Breeders' Academy become really valuable.
I'm not running it all by myself.
You know,
I know that.
A lot of times when I'll pick up the Genetics of the Fowl, I always have the other one right next to it, Animal Genetics. And I'll usually pull them both off the shelf at the same time. And so I'll look for whatever I need inside Genetics of the Fowl. A lot of time I'll take a quick look inside Animal Genetics too. I've got so many genetics books, but these two, they're really good actually. And it just doesn't cover animal genetics. It actually covers chicken genetics in there too, which I think is really cool.
What do you mean animal, like livestock?
Livestock, cattle, pigs, horses, everything. It covers anything that's livestock related, but it does cover chickens too. But the Genetics of the Fowl was the older book. And I used to think for a long time, I thought that's what he specialized was chickens, but I'm not so sure. I think he's all about animal genetics in general.
Do they have like turkeys and ducks and geese and stuff like that?
No, I don't remember seeing that in there.
I just thought it was chickens.
Genetics of the Fowl do cover other birds, actually. But you pick up any of these genetic books, and they're always sourcing F.B. Hutt. That's where they're getting their information. And when I noticed that I would just say, what the hell? What am I doing? I'm just going to pick up his book first. And if I don't get the answers I'm looking for, then maybe I'll pick up another and see if I can get some more information from multiple sources. But as far as the animal genetics by F.B. Hunt, I'm not going to name them all. There's a lot of chapters, but some of the main ones that I get most of my information from would be his chapter on genetics, simple Mendelian inheritance, incomplete dominance, chromosome and genes, sex determination, and sex-linked inheritance, lethal genes, linkage, crossing over, which we mention a lot. A lot of people dismiss the importance of that, but I urge you to check that out. Quantitative inheritance, heredity and environment, selection, inbreeding and hybrid vigor, and genetic resistance to disease. So you can see how these books have formed the way I teach and the what I teach.
Index right there pretty much covers it all.
Yeah. And it's not all of them. That's maybe half the chapters, actually, that's in that particular book. So those two books are really important to me. Genetics of the Fowl. I've got two of these. They're the first editions, what we call old dead man books. This is the original book. Now, as far as Genetics of the Fowl, you can go on Amazon, you can get this version of it, which is pretty good. It's basically the same book, but it's expensive actually, even for this replica. It's like almost $50 just for this book alone. And this is the one I'm going to send Frank.
That's pretty reasonable compared to some of those books though, Kenny.
Yeah.
Some of those books is up there a couple $100.
I can only imagine what if you can even find the first edition, how much this would go for. And if you can find it at all. And I got lucky, I got two of them. But animal genetics, actually you can find this one on Amazon. They're all over the place. They're not hard to find. Amazon.com and eBay, I've seen them. Matter of fact, when I was going to cover it, I went on there and looked. You can find these. These are actually easy to find. I think they average about $40, $40 or $50. I think I saw some for 20 or 30, but they weren't in the greatest shape.
Crosby says he's a book nerd just like you.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Cool.
You hang around Kenny very long,
You're
you'll
going to
start
get into
collecting
books.
I promise
Yeah.
you. Yeah. Yeah. I had a few. I've maybe had a dozen, and now I probably got 30 or 40, and it's starting to go on up.
Oh, we still have some to send you too.
I can't wait to get the one he just showed, though.
Yeah, I can't wait to see you come here, and I can show you my collection in person. I think you'd go crazy just looking at what I have in my collection. You'd probably go nuts.
You'd probably have to lock me out of that room. That's where I spent all the time while we was there.
You'd be amazed at the collection I actually have. And then we have some more throughout the house, and that's not counting what's in the shed. We have a lot because I've been going through them. I told Nancy, I go, these are all the bookshelves. I'm not putting any more bookshelves in this house. So if I get a new book and it's that good, then I'm going to have to kick another book out because I'm just keeping the best ones. I'm keeping the ones I use the most, the ones I like the most. And that's what I've been doing. I've been pulling some out, putting them in the shed, storing them because I do use some more than others.
You got to put that last comment up.
Which
it's
one?
Pretty funny.
This one?
Yeah.
Google might go down one day.
So he'll be prepared. Meaning he has a lot of books.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing.
That's what I said. Where we're going to go when all the books are gone. And Kenny sent me one while back on defects. And I said, Kenny, the same information that was in the book is still inside the Breeders' Academy. And I told Kenny, I said, Kenny, why don't you sell this? The members would love it. And he goes, I'm more into the digital. I don't really do this and that. But I'm one of those type of people that I love having a book in my hand. I do the digital, yes. But there's just something about having that book in your hand and being able to read it. I don't know what it is, but
no, I'm that way too.
Much better.
I like having the book. Like when I pick up a subject, I'll start pulling all kinds of books off my shelf and I'll go through them and I'll put sticky notes in them so I can go back. And once I got all the books with sticky notes in them, then I go back and start getting my information and then start putting everything together.
I have the different colored sticky notes, the pink, the red, the yellow, different ones, and I'll write off. Then they're done that.
Cool. Should we get started with the subject? Is there any questions that we need to answer before we get started with the topic?
They're having a good conversation in here.
So they don't need us at all, right?
No, they don't.
Yeah, that's true. It was not really a question that I've come up with, but BSA Ryder was talking about he had wormed his chickens for years. Matter of fact, no meds at all.
Good.
So
yeah, but did you see? Buddy. He says, guys, I got bashed so bad on Facebook for saying I don't worm my chickens. I was told my chickens
you will
won't last long because he doesn't worm them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I told this to my coaching calls yesterday. I had coaching calls all day yesterday. And I told them yesterday, they were all shocked. I said, I haven't wormed my birds in 15 years.
But what a lot of them doesn't understand, and it can be proof to them if they needed proof, the science part of it. A lot of those medications that you use to to kill all the internal parasites is worse on them a lot of times than the amount of worms they've got in them. The side effects, what it does to your soul, what it does to the digestive system. Now, it's not only killing worms, guys, it's killing all the bacteria, the good bacteria that's in the gut, and we all know what the good bacteria does. A good digestive system is a good immune system. So you destroy the digestive system, then you've got problems with the immune system. I'm like Kenny when it comes to resistance now.
That's what I like about Dr. Gallardo is him and I think a lot alike. And he thinks the way I do is that you don't want to kill every worm in the bird. They need a certain amount of worms in there to develop resistance, immunity. You kill every worm in that bird and it finally does get worms, it's going to take it over. Its body is not going to know what to do with it. And I was telling this on the coaching calls too, is if I have a bird and I have other birds in the pen, but that one bird seems wormy and I've checked the droppings out, I'm actually seen worms, he's lost a lot of weight, but the other birds are fine, I'm just going to cull that bird. I'm not going to waste any time, I'm just going to cull that bird, get rid of it. If I have a whole flock full of worms, then obviously I have a weakness that I have to deal with, but I may have to worm them. Does that happen? I think rarely when it happens like that. Usually it's always just one bird. But everybody panics, they see that one bird and they start worming everything. And to have a worming program where you're worming every month, and some of them every 2 weeks, which is crazy. I think doing it monthly is crazy.
Birds would stay sick every 2 weeks. They no more get over the worming till they worm them again. And a lot of those wormers, you give them a wormer, you go out there the next day, they're all humped up. They've been poisoned. They're sick from it. And a lot of them won't eat the next day after you worm them too. They won't even touch their feet after worming them.
I got a quick question. So what are some of the things that are going on when you have one bird on your farm who is real wormy and everybody else is fine?
The way I look at it is that bird has a weakness. When you have one bird like that and the worms thrive, that bird doesn't have the proper immunity, doesn't have the proper resistance. It's susceptible to those worms, and those worms thrive in that body. I think that's nature. I think whenever you see a bird that's infested with lice and mites and worms, there's a weakness going on there that the bugs thrive on. I've had a mentor who was a poultry geneticist. I've even talked to Dr. Gallardo, and there is a genetic factor. And when you're culling those ones that are highly susceptible and breeding to the ones that are healthy and they are resistant to those types of pests, you're going to little by little create a family that's constitutionally stronger and more resistant to those things. It's been forever since I've seen lice, mites, or worms on my birds. No lice, no mites. I don't have worms to the point where they're sick all the time. Do I have any worms in there? I don't see it in the droppings. I would assume maybe there's some, but as far as the susceptibility and the resistance to worms, I think they're doing really well. They're healthy. I really have to even deal with that.
Just to go back on what you was talking about and the question that Nancy asked, look at it this way. Why is it just that one bird and not the other 30 or 40 that you've got on your place? Why is it that one or
What's
two
going
birds?
on?
That
all
shows
being
you right
fed
there.
The same.
Yeah.
The bedding, everything is the same. So why is that one bird?
Look at one of the
being a
chapters that
problem?
was in that book. What was it? It was something about genetic resistance to disease. That's a chapter in that book on genetics. That shows that there's a genetic factor. So if you're selectively breeding them, not only for type, conformation, color, behavior, performance ability, production ability, but you're also selecting for health and vigor and resistance to disease, that includes pests like worms and lice and mites. So I was very good always whenever I had a bird that was infested like that. And usually when they're that infested, they rarely come back. They're never really healthy again after that. But if it's the only bird in the pen, I'm not going to waste my time with it. I'm just going to cull that bird, check out the other ones, watch them for a while. And that's what's worked for me. And to this day, I have I think I have some of the healthiest chickens out there.
My dad, I had a bird that I'd give him years ago, and it was an older bird. And he noticed he was missing feathers on his legs. So we got him out to check him out. And he was just covered in body lice, just completely covered to the point they had his skin irritated. But the two hens that was in with him didn't have a one on them. None. We checked the rest of the chickens. None of them had any lice on them. It was just that one bird. And he was an old bird. He was 8, 9 years old. He was at the end of his life. And I think, just like Kenny mentioned, it's a weakness that they have. The parasites recognize that weakness, and that's the ones they flock to.
Joe says, would worms be more prevalent in different areas of the United States? That's a good question. I don't really have the answer for that exactly, but I can tell you this, that I've got almost 300 members on my website, and many of these members have taken my advice and have selected their birds the way I've told them. And they stopped giving their birds medications, wormers, and things like that. And I'm getting reports all the time with people from all over the United States and different countries even saying that this is working for them. I even have members in the Philippines telling me they did the same thing. I can tell you this, though, that you have to selectively breed them. You have to cull really hard. You have to breed and select for resistance. But you also have to keep a closed yard. You have to practice good biosecurity. Because if you're always bringing in new organisms, new birds, whatever, they're going to bring in new problems and it's going to expose your birds. Your birds are never going to be resistant to every disease that exists, obviously. But you can be resistant and have some kind of immunity to what's ever in your area, and that's the best you can do. But if you're ever going to bring birds on or take birds off and bring them back in, I would quarantine them. I have a program called the 30-30-30 rule, meaning that the quarantine area is at least 30 feet from the rest of the birds. I'll quarantine that bird for 30 days. And if I don't see any symptoms or it's not showing any signs of disease, then I'll put a sacrificial bird in there, see if that develops anything within 30 days. And if it's good, then I'm going to assume it's going to be able to integrate in my yard really well. You're not going to build a disease-resistant flock if you're not practicing good biosecurity. That's just the way it is.
That's a fact.
Yeah. I'm thinking also good farm maintenance, because there are some parts of the United States that are more humid than others. Although we've had some humid summers, we're on the dry side. We're high desert dry. We don't get a lot of rain, where like in Kentucky, they get tons of rain, or like in the Philippines, they get tons of rain. So I would imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, Frank, that you have to be more diligent with your ground cover, making sure that the birds aren't sitting in mud all the time, things like that. What would you say?
Oh, yeah. We talked about it last time, the three-legged stool environment being one of them. You can't go through with your genetics and your nutrition and have those as good as you can get them. But like Nancy said, have a pen with no top on it or a poor top on it and your bird's walking around in mud. Just one of those is all it takes. And environment is a crucial part of just developing from a small chick to adult bird. If they don't have the right soil conditions, they're not going to make what they should have to start with, even if they've got good genetics and nutrition.
As far as different locations, humidity, moisture, heat, cold, whatever, you're going to see more of an issue with bacteria, molds, funguses, things like that, but not bugs as much. I don't think bugs would be affected by temperature and moisture and things like that.
I beg to differ. I think like mosquitoes.
Like Frank is. He has more rain, so there's more puddles, more places where water collects, standing water. That's where they're going to breed. I can see that. But worms that are host-specific or they live on the bird their whole life, no, it's carried into your farm with another bird or another animal.
4 years ago, I didn't even know what a plumage mite was. Okay.
Oh, really? They're the worst.
Yeah. Had no idea. Never had them on my farm. Never had them. Now, the ones I've got pinned, never get them. But the ones that's free ranging, the stags and the pullets, they get them terrible. And it was just like 25, 30 years, no plumage mites. And then one day I noticed, what done that to your tail? And I got to looking and doing research on it. And that's basically what it was. And to this day, I'll not see it for a long time. And then boom, I'll have one come in that's got them.
Yeah, those are buggers. They're hard to cure. The only thing I can think of using that would even take care of that, and it's iffy, would be ivermectin. Because you need to get the pesticide within the bloodstream so it kills anything that's sucking blood. But it's a very harsh, I don't want to call it a medicine, it's a pesticide, but it's very toxic. It will not only kill anything that sucks them, but it actually kills the good bacteria within their intestine. It's the last resort, and the scary thing is everybody's using that as their first choice.
Resort. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Dr. Gallardo said. He said it's like using atomic bomb to remove a stump out in your yard when you could use a quarter stick of dynamite.
Yeah.
And that's what it is in medicines. It's an atomic bomb. It's the strongest stuff that you can get, and that destroys the kidneys and liver. It's just very harmful to the birds. That would be my last resort. If they was getting their tails eat off and I was just completely out of whack with it, I would do that maybe as a last resort, but it would be my last resort.
What about garlic? Like for people who live in sandy areas and they have a lot of fleas, things like that.
I don't think we'd do anything for that.
Not those.
Not the feather mites, but like fleas. Would it do something for fleas? Because the fleas are eating or sucking on the blood, things like that.
For years, I give my chickens garlic for mites, external parasites, and I didn't get any. So I thought, okay, this is what's doing it then. So I kept on doing it. I read up on it where a constant thing of garlic could be as bad as good for them. So I quit
really?
the garlic, and I still haven't got. Yeah, I still haven't
Okay.
got any. Now you read some articles; they give good facts where garlic can be bad for poultry, and then you read other articles that says it can be good in some points for it. So you have to take the two, put them together, and weigh it out to which is best.
Okay.
It's funny though. I just feel like we just turned on record. We're already 43 minutes into the show and we haven't talked about anything yet.
Yeah, we have. We talked about it, parasites.
Yeah, we talked about a book. We talked about parasites and worms. Nothing that's on the topic that I wanted to cover today. So,
And if I'm cutting you guys off, it's because I think on my side it's freezing up and I'm not realizing it. So I'm probably talking over yins or
Delays.
that's the reason. I just noticed that a while ago because you guys didn't comment over it and you was like, and I'm thinking, what's wrong?
I'm seeing that there's like a delay. I'll say something to you,
Yes.
and I feel like I'm waiting forever for you to say something. But when I go and watch the show
that's what it's
later,
doing.
there's no delay. It's the weirdest
I
thing.
know it's done that before. It's actually done that before. But I just want to give you guys a head up because I didn't want you to think that I was automatically talking over you because it was freezing up and I wasn't knowing it.
I think that he's saying, is it called right tail when tail leans to one side? I've never heard it called that, but he's probably talking about
Yeah,
right
left,
tail.
right, or
Right tail.
yeah.
W-R-Y.
Stay away from
tail.
it. Run when you
it's
see it.
Serious defect. Don't mess
Yeah,
around with it.
serious.
Just cull it.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. This show was brought to you by the Breeders Academy, where we will help you to increase your knowledge of breeding, advance your skills as a breeder, and help you to improve the quality and performance of your fowl. As a member, we'll provide you with the roadmap that you will need to create a true family or strain. I urge you to check it out. You've got nothing to lose, and you can cancel at any time. You also have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Simply go to www.breedersacademy.com to sign up.
The Breeders Academy will not only change the way you think about breeding, but improve the way you breed your fowl.
I hope to see you there. So let's get started.
Let's see if we can tackle some of this. This is going to be, if you remember, we did a series on purity of blood. It turned out to be 8 episodes, 8 parts.
That we never finished.
That's why I'm
Well,
laughing.
I think me and
I
Rick
know what
Coast
you're
covered
laughing
the
at.
last one. So I don't know. I may cover that last one again, but it doesn't matter.
It was fun.
It was
I liked
fun. But this is going to be the same thing. It's going to be a multi-part, multi-episode series on breeders and multipliers. So we'll see how many it takes. And I've got a pretty good size outline, a lot of different topics that are related to that. And we'll just tackle them. If we finish it, we do. If we don't, we'll just continue on next week or until we get bored of the topic and we move on to something else. But I thought about it because all my members, when we did coaching calls, was like, they keep talking about these other breeding methods. And they always qualify it by saying, I do believe in the Founders Program. I do like the way that's laid out. I don't plan to divert from it. But I am curious about these other ones. Can you tell me about it? And that became a big thing. And so I always say that these other guys who are teaching these different methods, I would keep my mouth shut. So fine, you guys are teaching. You can teach whatever you want. Your followers can follow if you like. But when my members start questioning it and wanting to know more about it and wanting me to compare it, that diverts my attention. That diverts my focus. I've got to stop what I'm doing. I got to explain the difference. I got to explain why it's good or bad. I got to explain the pros and cons. We're going to cover these different programs one at a time. I don't know if they'll end up being a different episode for every one we do. We'll see if we combine some of them. Some of them are going to be a little bigger discussion than others, but we are going to get to it. But when I thought about it, I go, okay, if I'm going to cover all these, then I want to cover other topics too that are going to lead to that so that when we get to that, you're going to have full understanding. We're not just going to jump into these programs and just start tearing them apart. I want you to have a fuller understanding. We do this in the Breeders Academy too, where I'll cover a topic, but I build up to that topic a lot of times. I talk about the pros and cons, and then I get into the meat of the topics. If we're going to get into these different programs and really discuss them, then I want to build up. I want to move into them slowly. So that's what we're going to do. And hopefully by the time we're done, you'll have a better understanding the difference between an actual breeder, the difference between a multiplier, the pros and cons of these various breeding programs.
I've got asked about those a couple of times too, Kenny. And I let them know I wasn't trying to sound arrogant, but I told them, I said, if it worked, we'd have it in there. We don't have it in there, so we don't believe that it works. That's the reason Kenny has what's in there. We know that it works 100%, but if the others would work, Kenny's not big enough that he wouldn't take and say, okay, this is going to add to it. I'm going to put this in there too. Whatever it takes to make it better, that's what he's going to do. But if it was as good or better, it would be in there.
Yep. Last week, we talked about, are you a breeder or multiplier? Which one are you? So we talked about there's a big difference between a true breeder and someone who breeds. We talked about some of the characteristics of a true breeder, such as you must have a love for the bird, you must have a strong desire to study the birds, you must always be looking for ways to improve their health and ability to resist disease, and you must keep good records. That's as far as we got. I had a pretty big outline, and we didn't get very far that time, so we're going to continue on. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to take all that, and we're going to take it to the next level. We're going to go a little further. Today, we're going to talk about breeder or multiplier, quality versus quantity. So this will be the second part of that series. Once again, Frank, this is pretty controversial.
Oh, yeah. The thing about it is, a lot of people will think that they're breeders until you actually sit them down and give them the definition of a breeder. And then they're scratching their head saying, wait a minute, you might be right. I may not be a breeder or a true breeder. Because I tell you, to be a breeder, in quotations, that is a huge shoes to fill. To be a good breeder, you've got to have a science-backed breeding program to start with. So you can't even be a good breeder without a good program. You've not even got started yet if you don't have a good program.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. It's going to be one of the episodes that we're going to cover too. I'm sure what we're going to talk about is going to piss some people off, especially the peddlers. So if we're pissing you off,
We'll be doing our job.
You might be a peddler.
Kenny.
Okay. The first thing I want to talk about, Frank, would be quality should always be more important than quantity. I know it sounds obvious, but let's talk about it.
Yeah. The thing about it is you can always get more dollars, Kenny, out of 10 birds compared to 2 birds. Now, 2 birds that fit every description that I want, to me, is better than 50 birds, okay? But in the right hands, quantity makes more money every time.
They always feel like there's a monetary value to every bird, so they don't always have to be the best quality because there's always going to be someone who's going to buy even the poorer quality for a lesser price.
Or he doesn't look like much, but he'll really produce. That's the
Wow.
number one, let me take your money bit right there.
And I know this is obvious, or it should be common sense, but it's not about having a lot of birds. It's about having really good birds. It's being willing to cull the defective, the sick, and the substandard birds. So if you have a bird that has a defect, or it's sick, or has some kind of a respiratory disease, they should be culled. If it doesn't represent its breed, that's what I mean by being substandard. If it doesn't represent its breed, then it should be culled. I don't care about the name of the bird. I don't care about the percentage. I don't care about the fraction of the different bloodlines. It should represent its breed as far as conformation, type, yes, even color, behavioral, temperament, performance, production qualities. And a lot of people will say, I favor this trait more than that trait. And my members know very well that I'm like, why are you just selecting for one? That's what they call tandem selection. That never really works. You need to start looking for the complete package. The birds that have the complete package. Yes, if you hatch 100 birds, it may be only a few of the birds. It's not going to be a large number of the birds, but that's what you want, Frank. You want the few that stand out because that's what's going to take your strain to the next level. And if you can at least find those within a good number of birds, then you're doing your job and you're going to improve them.
I'm going to go back a
After
step
he's
here,
done.
Okay.
Kenny. As far as the sickness that she was talking about, me, myself, if a bird comes up and that bird gets sick, I don't even care if it's coccidiosis, something's out of control, but it's coccidiosis. I'll never, ever breed that bird. I learned a long time ago, you breed sick birds, you get sick birds. And not only that, if you're breeding for resistance and you put that bird in there, you've shot it in the foot right there. Game over. You put a weak bird in there that's sickly, then that destroyed the health of your new birds. You have to be disciplined when you go into that because breeding the one bird can destroy a family overnight.
And
Fast.
some people will say, oh, I got the answer for that. I'll just cure them. I'll get some medication.
Antibiotics.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
they don't realize that they're just hiding a weakness. And a lot of times it doesn't work because the birds show some kind of improvement They're maybe less symptomatic than they were before, but it ends up being chronic and it shows up later. So if you're having to go out there and inject birds with the medication, and most of them are using it wrong in the first place, I suggest that you go and check out our episode with Dr. Gallardo on antibiotic use and misuse. Because if you've watched that show and you're still misusing it, I don't know what to tell you. You're just not going to get it. Anybody who watches that show and still uses antibiotics, then we got a problem.
Antibiotics just a mask.
Yep.
And it hurts you in selection. When you're putting antibiotics in them, it covers up what that bird truly is. Without antibiotics, that bird wouldn't even be there for you to breed it, more than likely. Been gone a long time ago. But I'm going to go back, poor Tony Seville, and I agree with him 1,000% on this. If the bird wants to die, hip it out. Make it fast for it. Do it in a humane way. Don't let it sit around and suffer and be sick. Let it die.
Understand that if you have a bird with a respiratory disease, enough to needs medications to fix it or drop the symptoms, then why would you breed it knowing that it's going to produce more like it when it comes to diseases and poor health? Yeah. Did you want to say something?
Eventually I'll get it. What I'm going to say is probably make you a little angry because I'm going backwards. But
as long as you're not a peddler.
Okay. This is going to be
unless you're not supporting the peddlers. Let's put it that way, okay?
Let me talk. All right. Doesn't breeding quantity give you quality?
That's a good question. Wow. Okay. Hopefully I understand it the way you're presenting it. I always tell people, hatch as many chicks as you can manage and afford. Because the more birds you have on the ground from that particular mating, the better selection you're going to have. The chances that you're going to select something that's actually going to improve your strain and take it to the next level. And you're not going to get that from, let's say you get one clutch from a hen and a cock. It doesn't give you much of a selection. You'll be lucky if you get one bird out of that. Is that what you're talking about?
In the beginning.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
In the beginning.
Now,
yeah, in the beginning.
To say that, you have to qualify it because most people are going to take that wrong. Like Frank did, I think. Okay?
I just want to get that out there. Yeah.
What do you mean by in the beginning?
In the beginning, you're trying to get the best birds you can to carry on your strain. Now, once you get them to where you want them, you're not going to have to breed all that numbers to get good birds. You could breed fewer birds to have good quality birds. But in the beginning, you want the best birds that you can get. And the more you raise, the better selection that you can get. I just want to throw that in there.
I agree with you, Frank, in that the better the quality of the strain, the more you have a true foundation that are uniform, consistent, and predictable, and they're able to reproduce themselves. You do get to a point when you don't have to hatch as many chicks, but I'd still push everybody to hatch as many chicks as you can manage for. You'll hear me say that over and over again, because I do believe the more chicks you have to select from, the better your selection is going to be, and you're going to be able to pick that one. And that's all you need to move the strain forward, especially within the first few stages of the Founders Program. You're looking for those few that are going to take your strain to the next level. Now, once you get further into like stage 6 of the Founders Program, your family, the number of birds are going to expand. It's going to get bigger. Okay, so that's going to change just a little bit, but it still applies. The more chicks you can hatch and produce, the more you can manage, the better your selection, because you don't want to only hatch a small number and then you're forced to breed to all of them. And that's what they do. They breed to all of them. They're not breeding to the select few. They're breeding to all of them. They wonder why they're not making progress. It's like my Maximus line. It was those hens. Where's that picture? And this picture of these hens is not even a good picture because they're actually running to me. So their conformation's a little off when you look at the picture, but they were actually running to me to be fed when I took the picture. I think Nancy might have even been holding the bucket, or Nancy might have even took the picture.
I think I took the picture.
But there was about a half a dozen out of this particular group that looked just like this. And those birds, out of all the birds I hatched that year, these are the ones that improved my strain the most and took it to the next level. And now, as a family, they're beautiful. I can't wait for Frank to come over and check out my birds.
The black pearls is the ones I'm really wanting to see, though.
Yeah.
And I know you reneged them over to Tawny, but I think you might have a little more over giving them to her so fast. I think they could be hours.
You know,
they're hers, but they're mine. They're everybody's. She's not going to move out and take them with her. I can tell you that right now.
If anything happens to Kenny, I'll make sure you get a few of those.
Yeah.
There you go. I love the Maximus. They're beautiful birds, but I'm like Kenny. I'm more prone to the darker fowl, the black chickens, than I am just about anything. I'm a sucker for them, I guess you could say.
Okay, let me just say a little bit more about what I was saying. Correct me if I'm wrong. The problem could be is that you breed the quantity, but you don't cull down to the quality because you're thinking about, I can make money off of that chicken and that chicken and that chicken and that chicken.
Okay.
That's what they do.
Yeah, that's what they do.
And that's where the problem lies, would you say?
That's just one of the problems.
That's
okay.
one of the problems.
Now, understand this. I don't exactly have a problem with that exactly, and I'll tell you why. If they're breeding birds, they hatched a lot of chicks. I want to say it over again. The more you can hatch out, the better. The more you can manage, the better. Okay, fine. You hatch out 100 chicks. You've culled the defects, the sick, and the substandard. You select from there the top percent. From there, you're going to watch them and you're going to pick the standouts. Now, the birds that are left still should be decent birds. Then I have no problem selling them because they may be your second best, but they're probably really good birds for a customer to start from. I have no problem with that as long as they don't have defects, as long as they're not sick, as long as they're not substandard. I don't expect you to sell, and I don't think you should sell your standouts because you're not going to make any progress. Someone who says they sell their best birds, they're either lying or they're not progressing their family. Let's put it that way.
No.
Would you say that to be true in the first and second, or maybe even the third stage?
That's a good question.
I wouldn't think they would still have really good quality in the first and second stages.
That's a really good question, actually. You can go now.
I told him earlier, God, Kenny, I'm really tired. If I nudge your leg, that means I'm going
You just gave out our secret.
I'm bailing out.
I'm going to bail out.
So if you see us go to commercial, she's going to be gone when we
I'm
come
bailing
back.
out. But no, I'm hanging in there.
Okay.
Nancy's going to be gone.
That's a really good question, but I'll say the same thing, that the same thing holds true, that if you're in the first few stages of the Founders Program, yes, you're still looking for the standouts, everything I said. Yes, you're going to have a lot of variation with those offspring, definitely. But as long as you're honest in telling them where you're at and what they're made of and all that kind of stuff, and that they're not your foundation, but they are good representatives of their breed still, they don't have the poor qualities we were talking about, then as long as you're honest with the buyer, then I'm okay with that too.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, it never fails. If you go here, say back 20 years ago, and it's still the same way, and you go to this guy that's got, say, 400 or 500 head of gamefowl, he's always got this particular yard that he says, now, nothing over here is for sale. Now, everything over here is for sale, but nothing over here is for sale. And it's always a bigger proportion on the side that he won't sell that it will sell. So what they're doing is basically everything they've culled out that they don't want, they put on the for sale yard. And that's pretty much how they sell. And people's buying what they don't want because, like Kenny said, you go to somebody's house and you go, where's your brood pens? Oh, they're over there. Let's go over there and sell me this one. No, I sell that. If they go on in and get it, it's yours for the money. They're raising chickens. They're not a breeder.
That's a telltale sign if they're willing to sell their best birds. They either don't really understand what they're doing because they think, oh, I'll just reproduce them and get more of them later. I can reproduce those birds. It's not as easy as you think, for one thing. And you could be we talk about like genetic drift where a disease can come and wipe out a good number of your birds. A lot of times it takes your good birds too. That changes the direction of where your strain was going and the looks and everything about them. So if you want someone to come and pick out your best birds and walk away with them, it's going to change the direction of your strain.
I wonder too if sometimes, and I'm being so sneaky tonight, I wonder too if some people...
If you keep making sense like this, I'm going to kick you out of here.
I'm making your life a little hard tonight.
You're making me work.
You're going to say, I'm not taking you out to dinner after this.
I'm taking you out to dinner? I didn't know that.
No, you're not.
Oh, wow.
You are now.
I think I am now.
If I too could, I'm a good girl. No, okay. I wonder if some of them do this, and you guys would know this more than me, but they have their yard full of chickens and they've got the ones that they're willing to sell over on one side and they've got their brood fowl that the buyer can see from a distance and they claim that's their brood fowl, but what their real brood fowl is behind closed doors where nobody can see them. I mean, as a selling tactic. Okay, you don't want any of these? If you want my brood fowl and it's my best stuff,
sure.
This is going to be pricey. You know what I mean? When actuality, their brood fowl is behind closed doors where you can't see it.
Yeah.
I've had them tell me that. They'll walk over to a certain side and they'll go, now, these are not for sale, but let me take you over here. Now, these are some good chickens. What about these? No, those are not for sale. These right here's for sale. Okay, all right, I'll sell them to you. I've had people actually laugh and make jokes that they actually done that. Really.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Just using it, like Nancy said, as a selling tool.
I don't sell birds anymore, but when I did, I would take people through the yard, and I did have birds I would sell and ones that were part of my breeding program, and they weren't for sale for any price. And we would go back and forth. It would just drive me crazy. So I got to the point, and this is back when I made sure they bleached their feed and I did everything I was supposed to do. I don't even take people in my backyard anymore. I don't even take the chance. With AI going around and all that kind of stuff, and we had Newcastle for a while. So what I was doing after that was I had a certain area in the front of my yard where I had drop pens. Any birds I had for sale, they could select from that. And I wouldn't even take them out there and show them my family, which is a bummer. I get it, because I want to show them off. I want to show how good they look. It just made it easier to have them select, and they were good birds. Select the birds that I had available and then be done with it. And most of the time, they were okay with it.
Yeah. We really got a laugh out of that. After I thought about it, I was like, those poor people, they really got shafted and had no idea. They thought, okay, I've talked to him about his best chickens. And really, they just got conned.
Oh, yeah.
And it was funny the way the guy was telling it and going on. But I thought about it afterwards and I was like, no, that's pretty bad. That wasn't right. You know, and that's a lot of the reason I don't sell chickens anymore. I don't fool with. It's a headache to me, but it's just, I don't know. I love breeding them. I love having them around, but I don't like to sell.
Yeah, I'm not much into selling these days anymore. Matter of fact, I got a handful of members. I'll be giving them a call here pretty soon to come and pick up birds. I give my members birds. If they can come pick them up, they just can't go in my yard. They got to bring boxes, and they can take the birds with them. They're going to get some good birds. I want to cover this before I cover Robbie. Derek's saying, I can't wait for Kenny and Nancy to move to the West Coast and we can hang out. Derek, I didn't know you lived on the West Coast. Maybe you messed up. I am on the West Coast. I'm in Southern California.
No, I think maybe he's talking about him moving to the West Coast.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Is that what he's saying? It's so small. Is that
Where
what
we
it
can
says?
hang out. I think that's what he intended. I can't wait
Yeah.
till we get maybe to the West Coast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, if he does, give me a call.
That's what he wrote. Kenny was right. That's what he'd written.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, I do live on the West Coast. Robbie.
Unfortunately, in California.
Yeah. Robbie says, just for clarity, he means avian influenza when he says AI, not in artificial intelligence. Yeah, avian influenza.
No, that's bad stuff. Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't blame you on that, though, Kenny. I would be really scared to do that, have a lot of visitors out there and that stuff going around. That would be not good at all.
Yeah, and Lee's saying the same thing. A lot of good breeders do not sell their birds. He's noticed that. And I noticed that too. A lot of my mentors that I refer to and I worked under, they didn't sell birds either. They just weren't interested in that. They raised them for themselves, and they had every intention to breed and create the best birds they could, but they just weren't interested in the selling part of it. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We can go on and on. We can make a whole show about that. Will you stop it? I'll get to that in a second. Nancy, from now on, I'm setting you out over there. You're too distracting.
Probably thinking about the chicken terminator, probably.
Yeah, yeah.
Was that it, Nancy?
When I first read it, I'm like, "Is I'm tired here?" And then I'm like, "Oh, AI. That's right. We're continuing that conversation."
Well, he is.
Robbie,
Yeah.
you're getting me in trouble.
I
over
got
here.
what he was saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shame on you.
That was a good one, though.
You made
Yeah, that
my
was a good
wife
one.
laugh in the middle of an important speech.
Y'all can go back and listen to the show again and mute me out and listen to what Kenny has to say because it's really good.
How would you know?
There you go.
You're not even listening.
I already okay. I'm not supposed to say that, but
Oh.
I already know what you're saying. I hear it constantly.
Yeah.
I should know it by now.
Okay.
All right.
Can we move on?
Yes, let's move on.
If
What do
you
we
don't-
got going?
If you don't, you're not paying attention, Nancy. You're blocking him out. If you don't know every detail of it, the Founders Program, the website,
Yeah.
you've blocked him out and just refused to let anything in.
Like Tani says, I'll get to talking to her and she's like, I've heard this a million times.
I've been married to him for 39
Almost, yeah.
years and a half. And yeah, I used to block him out. I used to just let him talk. And of course, my mind would be over here
And as bad
thinking
as
about
that-
butterflies.
As bad as
But-
that sounds, and now that I know that, it makes me mad. But, you know,
But that
you've
was
heard,
years ago.
you heard that term, the mastermind, where if you get two or more people together and they have a discussion, something else comes from that, from
Yeah.
a higher source or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be talking to Nancy, and yeah, now I know she wasn't listening. But from that, I would get ideas. Things would pop into my brain like, oh, wow, that's a great idea. And then I'd go write down, implement it.
Oh, we lost Frank.
We lost Frank. Let's see if he comes back. A lot of times I would get these great ideas by talking to Nancy, even if she didn't respond. Hello, Frank.
We missed you.
Yeah, you were gone so long.
I was getting ready to say that, and it went out. I went. So I don't know what happened there. Sorry about that.
That's crazy.
So I don't know what's going on with it.
As far as quality versus quantity, having too many birds, even good birds, can work against you. And I see that all the time where they have so many birds that they can't take care of them properly. And I think that comes back to bite them too. They're not able to take care of them. They're not able to keep them healthy. They're not able to afford the really good feed. They start putting in more scratch to save feed, which I'm not sure they're saving feed that way anymore because scratch is almost as expensive as pellet. So
It's crazy.
it is. I'm to the point where I'm putting less scratch in my feed all the time, or even corn, because it's
A 30-pound bag here the other day I was looking at, it was $18 for a 30-pound bag, a 5-way. It's crazy.
Yeah, but what did it
Feed is
used to
what
be? Because I never paid attention to
I could get a thing of
feed
scratch
bills.
for about $8.99, a 50-pound bag.
I remember when they were like
double.
$3 a bag for a 50-pound
Yeah.
bag. I remember when I was a kid, I could get it for $3. And then when we moved here, it was like $4.
Really?
Yeah. And now it's $20 a bag.
Even before the pandemic, a thing of corn was like $4.99. Now it's $15.99 for just corn, cracked or whole corn. Just between 3 years ago and now, feed has tripled. A bag of oats you could get for $6.99 or now like $26, $27 a bag.
Let's hope
It's
it goes
crazy.
down.
The sunflower seeds went up too, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot. Now, the dog is me this time, guys. Sorry.
We're having a hell of a show tonight.
Okay.
folks.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Frank? Too many birds can work against you?
Oh, yeah, most definitely, because you get over your head, and anybody's had chickens before, you never got enough pens as it is anyway. If you're taking it easy, you never still got enough pens. But the thing about it is you get overpopulated, you're not taking care of them, like you said, you're not feeding them good quality feed. Then we get into the disease part. Every time that you're overexposed, they're not getting the help they need, Mother Nature will come in to thin them out to make them a smaller group of chickens every time, whether you want it or not, and cut the flock for you, I guess you could say. But yeah, it can be a bad thing. It can put disease into your family, or the birds that you do have is never going to reach their full potential because they're not getting the care that they truly need.
I go back to what I was saying earlier, is that when they have that many birds, they tend to breed to more birds than they should. Instead of the standouts, they have open pens, so they decide they're going to put a bird in there and breed it. And you're not going to make the progress you think you're going to make when you're doing that kind of thing. It's always the standouts that are going to move your strain to the next level.
I think it's a misconception, Kenny, and I know you run into this a lot. People think that you can't start out with a pair. They think you've got to have 2, 3 pairs, a trio. They never really think of they can just start from a hen and a rooster a lot of times. So I think it's the mentality of people. They've got to have more than a pair of birds in order to start out breeding. They've got to have a whole flock in order to start out.
In a lot of the breeding programs we're going to talk about eventually do encourage using multiple birds. Whereas where I try to get you to bring it down to that one cock and hen, the best ones. If you buy a trio, and my members will show this to me in a coaching call where they'll buy a trio from somebody and they're like, they want to breed the cock to the 2 hens and go different directions. I'm saying, no, pick the best cock. Let's pick the best hen. That's the direction we need to go. Hold that hen off to the side just in case you need her later, as far as you lose birds or something happens. She could be a backup. But if you've done your job right, those birds that you bought have one job, and that's to get the line started, and then you're not going to use them anymore. And that's the part people have a problem with, because they spend a lot of money on them, and they think that they have to right away start line breeding them, which is the worst thing you could ever do. Most of the time, those birds have a lot of genetic diversity, have a lot of issues, have a lot of faults. They're not most of the time going to even reproduce themselves. The worst time to do a line breeding program is in the beginning of the program. That's way down the road.
And that's the misconception. I'm glad you brought that up, Kenny. A lot of people, line breeding is the beginning and the end. The world revolves around line breeding. And I'm not going to spill the beans, but the Founders Program, line breeding is a long ways off.
Yeah, there's a lot you
Way
need to do
start.
before you even get to the line breeding. And
Exactly.
people want to start with the line breeding right away. And then they wonder why they don't have a family that's uniform and consistent. They don't have a family that can reproduce themselves. It's not a true foundation. They still have a lot of genetic diversity, and I don't understand why. and they think there's a problem, whereas they just didn't set them up right. You got to say something? I can feel it.
Yeah, I do. So are you saying that, in your opinion, when somebody is looking for a few chickens to start their new family or new strain, they should look for a pair and not look for a trio?
With a caveat, when you go to buy birds and they're offering a trio, I don't have a problem with you buying them, but we're not going to start with all those birds.
All three.
No. Let's put it this way. If you're going to buy birds, I'm reluctant to tell people to breed multiple birds in the beginning because they get in the trap of trying to create a strain with all of them. I usually try to focus them into one cock and one hen. Now, I don't have a problem with this exactly. If you're disciplined and focused and determined to do it properly, let's say you do buy a trio. And I've been talking to members about this too. The hens equally look good. They're sisters. There's not a big difference between the two. And that's why they say this. I don't know which one's a pick. I look at them and go, yeah, they're both pretty good. So what I'll tell them is go ahead and breed the cock to the two hens. Keep good records. Keep them separate. Look at the offspring from each of them. And the hen that produces the best offspring, those are the ones you're going to move forward. Get rid of the other ones.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
As long as they don't lose focus and they get good records and they do it responsible. That's the main thing.
Yeah, because I guarantee you, if you look close enough, one hen is better than the other. If you look close enough, the offspring from one hen is going to be better than the other. And then you can move forward from there. And then we can work you through stage 2 and stage 3 of the Founders Program and get you going so that we're on our way to building a foundation line. And inbreeding is the same way. If you're going to do inbreeding, and I always try to center them down to the best hen and the best cock, but you've got a number of hens and a number of sisters and they all look really good, then go ahead and breed the brother to the multiple sisters, keeping them separate. Look at the offspring. You got to know who the parents are. And then the ones that are the best, move forward with those, get rid of the rest. I have no problem doing that kind of testing, but you have to still focus in one direction. You can't take them and go in different directions. We have so much to do before we get into that kind of a breeding where you're separating them like that.
Yeah, the worst thing anybody can do is start out as a family tree in the beginning. You want to keep it in a direct line for a certain length of time.
The first 3 stages of the Founders Program is all about cleaning them up, fixating them, getting prepared for creating a foundation. There's just so much that has to do. And I hear that from the members all the time. Those first few stages are like, wow, I never thought of doing it that way. Just start line breeding. Now they understand the way they're set up, why they're set up, and the results that you're going to get. Because if you don't do that right, you're not going to do the rest of it right. You're just not.
You said it, Kenny. If they start out line breeding, they're going to hurt that family worse than anything. They're going to destroy it just right off the bat. Line breeding can be a wonderful thing, okay? It can be a useful mating method, but it has to be used at the right time. If you don't use it at the right time, it can go the opposite way really fast.
The offspring will tell you everything you want to know about the parent, and they're going to tell you what direction to go. Tony used to tell me all the time. The offspring will tell you the past, the present, and the future of your broodfowl, and it'll tell you where you go after that. Christopher, he asked a really good question here. Why can you not continue a line that you bought? There's a reason someone goes to breeders to buy fowl. Okay. Now, if you look at the Founders Program, the way it's set up, whenever you buy birds that are either hybrid crosses, mongrels, or unrelated, you're obviously going to use the Founders Program the way it's set up. There's very few breeders that actually have a family that I would say are established. They're uniform, consistent. They can reproduce themselves. Most of the people I know, even some of the good breeders, you get fowl from them. I see it all the time from my members. They get a lot of genetic diversity. Right from the beginning, matter of fact, you look at the offspring, there's different color legs, different comb types, different color feathers, things like that. Very seldom do you see birds that actually reproduce themselves. Now, if you already have an established strain that you bought from someone and they're a true strain, you're still going to make them what you want them. I don't care how good they are or who they came from. I would still run them through the Founders Program the way we have it laid out, and you're going to improve them so much more. You're going to lock in those genes even better. You're going to fixate those genes. You're going to clean them up even more than they were before. Trust me, even some that get really good birds when they're starting out and they run them through the Founders Program, they're amazed how much better they are than the original breeders' birds were.
Kenny just said it, but you want to use those birds as seed fowl. If you're using those birds over and over again, you're not going to go forward. The way Kenny has it started, you use those birds one time, you get offspring that's better than them.
There was a time when I had the Founders Program set up, depending on the quality of the birds and where you got them and how pure they were, would determine where you're at within the program. And sometimes we were starting them at different parts of the program. But what we found out through the results they were getting and the fowl they were producing from it, that it was better just to start from the beginning. Just start right from the beginning. Whatever birds you got, pick the best cock and hen from that, treat them as seed fowl, treat them as the Adam and Eve, work them through the program, and you're going to get much better results. Understand this too. Let's say you get a trio or a pair from a really good breeder, from a really good foundation. They are well bred. To take them and put them right into a line breeding program like everybody wants to do. First of all, you don't know how he was selecting them to keep them that way. So you're probably going to select them different. Your environment's most likely going to be different than his. So they're automatically going to change. So you can see where having a cleanup process and a fixation process is important, no matter how good the birds are or how related they are or how mixed up they are. Those first few stages are so important. I don't care where you got the birds from.
And the thing about it is, why wouldn't you want to start from the beginning anyway? Kenny's birds are great. They're beautiful. But I bet you anything, if I give Kenny a pair of mine and he give me a pair of his, we're going to find things in each other's birds that I'd rather not have. I want to change them in some form. It could be something little, cosmetic. But there's always going to be something that you want to change. I promise you that. And by starting at the first of the Founders Program gives you the opportunity to make them the way you want them, not the way somebody else has.
Tony here is saying something really important. People are told how to breed them so they can't duplicate them. Yeah, a lot of times that breeder is not on your side. He's not going to tell you what you need to know to duplicate them. A lot of times he's going to give you decent birds, but they're not going to be related. You'll have maybe two birds that are pure but not related, or you'll have birds that are crosses but look good. You just got to assume whenever you buy birds, there's work that needs to be done. You got to clean them up, and you're going to have to run them through the paces so that you can actually create your foundation strain out of them. Assume that they're going to be different than the other breeders' birds, no matter what you do, and you need to make them your own. It's hard to explain this without talking about the Founders Program, man. I'm telling you, this is so hard.
It is. But one thing that you brought up there about the birds not being related, Kenny, and when I was a kid, I just take the gamecocks and I'd open them up, and there was all these phone numbers to these breeders. And I was like the little troll back before there was a troll. When I'd dial them up and talk to them, pick their brain, aggravate them to death. A lot of them wouldn't even answer the phone after I called so many times. And exactly. Kenny, I know they've told you this too, as well, because we've talked about it. A lot of the breeders, the good breeders, they would admit to me that they never sold any birds that were related when they let them go. They was always non-related birds because they didn't want people to start out with their blood. They didn't want them to be able to have the same blood that they had. So they would always sell non-related birds. And that's how the stigma of you need to start out with birds that's not related come into effect to make a family to where you get the hybrid vigor, whatever. But I know you've had to hear this over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would just assume you need to clean them up. You need to run them through their paces. Yeah. And if you breed them and you're seeing variation within the offspring, that's a telltale sign that they're not related or they're crosses or there's some issues with them.
The chicks, as soon as they hatch, if there's any variance whatsoever, any differences in those chicks, you'll see it. They'll be different colored. There'll be something different about them. But now if they all come out of the egg pretty good, that's a good sign. You just got to wait it out till they get adult to see the difference. But I'm like Kenny. I agree with it 1,000%. I think if you're starting a Founders Program, I would definitely start from the first of it and just make them my own.
Christopher's saying, thanks, Frank. You answered my next question, which would have been, with the Founders Program, if you got fowl from you gentlemen, can I improve them? I don't care how good the birds are from whoever, they can always be improved. Look at mine. I spent a good 10, 12 years improving them to a point where I actually thought this was probably going to be the best they were going to get. And through little variations, it worked in my favor, and still culling the little things I didn't want, they improved even more. So I don't care how good they are, they can always be improved. I don't care who you get them from.
I agree. And the thing about it is the eye of the breeder will always come out in the offspring every time. If you're doing what you're supposed to do, your eye will show in your offspring of the birds that you're actually breeding. It will every time.
Not just saying the Breeders' Academy will give you a blueprint to success. That's the way I look at it. It's an awesome system. So the next topic, Frank, is you must have a strong desire to improve and perfect your strain. Because a lot of people, when they get birds, they just breed them. They're not thinking about it. They're just putting birds together. And if you're not properly selecting them, or you're not doing some kind of selection, they're going to revert to something that you weren't expecting. My brother did this. I gave him a really good bunch of birds, and within a few years, I didn't even recognize him anymore because he wasn't really selecting them. He was just putting birds together.
Yeah. I always call them replicators. They go buy some off somebody and they keep those birds the way they look then and there. That's what they bred toward. Even if they was selecting, they'd select the stags to match the cock and they'd match the hen with the pullets. And that's the way they breed. They didn't breed with their own eye. They didn't even think about that part of it. They didn't know the chickens was plastic, that, hey, I could raise a large number here and select what I want to breed back, what I want them to look at. They wasn't thinking of it that way. And once a breeder actually thinks of that and comes to terms with that, how plastic this is and how they can take the founders program to make the birds look and act and perform the way they want, then that's when it gets really interesting.
I was talking about that with Rick Coast, the way evolution works, natural selection, and how it relates to selective breeding. And when we see this in the wild, and we see this in domestication, Darwin proved it when he bred his pigeons, and we see it creating new species in the wild, is that you think they're fixed, but they're not. And the fact we have so many different breeds of chickens, gamefowl, shows how sculptable they are, how moldable they are, how much we can change them, how we can create different breeds, different varieties. We can almost make them what we want by just looking at the different variations that are expressed from time to time, breeding to the ones that are beneficial, culling the ones that are not. Within a number of years, you have a completely different strain. That's the neat part, that we have, as breeders, we have the power to create what we want, to create a strain, make them different, make them unique from others. You see this even with pure breeds when I was judging shows, or even some of the domestic chickens where they have a breed, let's say you have a number of breeders, they have something like the Buckeye is a good example of that. You have 10 different breeders, 10 different birds sitting from a distance. They all look like Buckeyes. They have the proper conformation, proper type. Look at them closer. They have little subtleties, little unique points that make them different from the others, that shows that each breeder put his own mark on those birds. And we can do that even with the gamefowl. Even with American games, we can make them our own. We can take them from a good breeder like Frank, and we can take what Frank's done and not only improve them, but make them what we want them to be. That's the power we have as breeders that people don't appreciate.
You hit the nail on the head, Kenny. And a lot of times, I'm just going to say it upsets me when people's talking about birds they have and they'll say they're big birds. All of them's 5, 6 to 7 pounds. And if you want them smaller, you can make them smaller.
Yeah.
If you want them taller, you can make them taller. It irritates me that they talk of the bird like it's left up to the bird rather than the breeder. And a lot of times I've got to catch myself and say, okay, they're not thinking the way you're thinking about it. Just explain it to them in a different way. But it used to really get me when they talk like that, like it was left up to the chicken rather than the breeder.
I'll get members now and then thinking it's a lost cause because the birds are too short, too low station, and they want to just scrap the whole thing. But there's a lot of great things about those birds too, but the trait that seems to be the most important to them seems to be lacking. Okay, and they want to add new blood or they want to scrap the family. So the first thing I say to them, I go, if you look at the various birds within your strain, you're going to have different intensities for different traits. So let's say station is the issue. Any that are taller than the average. Yes. Okay. Create a subline. That's the bird you want to breed to. Start exaggerating. Little by little, that station will get taller and taller by selecting the birds with the highest station. Will it happen in one breeding? No. If it does, then we're probably dealing with a lot of genetic diversity. We're dealing with hybrid vigor. The results we're seeing are misleading. They're only temporary. But if we're talking about a strain that just went awry, that in time we weren't paying attention to what was happening, before we know it, they were smaller. A lot of people want to blame that on inbreeding, which it's not. It's poor selection most of the time. We can fix them by exaggerating those traits in the direction that we want to go. And I've fixed a lot of strains that way by telling them, don't scrap it, don't add new blood. Most of those traits are polygenic. We can improve them by breeding to the highest or lowest intensity, depending on where you want to go. And they will improve. Just don't expect it to be overnight. It may take a few years, but you will get there. That's how moldable, that's how sculptable these birds are. And people don't realize it. They just think that, they went in the wrong direction. Oh, I screwed them up. Time to start over. Time to add new blood.
The first thing a breeder or somebody just starting gets in their head is just what you just now said. Once they realize how plastic, how moldable these birds are, If a breeder doesn't understand that, it holds them back. I really believe that. It holds them back, not knowing that.
Not just saying, Kenny, is it true that some strains can't be inbred? The only strains that can't be inbred would be ones that have low resistance to disease. They already have a lot of weaknesses, things like that. You don't want to inbreed birds that already have defects and faults because you're going to perpetuate it.
Or lethal.
Yeah, lethal genes especially, yeah. In general, most birds can be inbred. Now, if your inbreeding can happen in various ways at various times, it's a great way for cleaning up a family. It's one of the methods we use inside the Founders Program. I'm not going to tell you where, but it's a major method that we do use. It can also be used later down the road to actually clean them up a little bit more. If you're wondering whether they can be inbred or not, inbreed them, see what you get, okay? A lot of times, man, you made me lose my train of thought.
Sorry.
Oh, shit, Nancy.
Oh, man, sorry.
Where was I going with that?
It's getting late.
Yeah.
It's getting late, Kitty.
I worked probably harder today than I should have. I should have took it easy. Oh, man, I totally forgot where I was going. Let me think. My mind's just like blank right now. There's nothing coming in.
I'm in
You
serious.
was talking about the inbreeding.
Shit. Yeah, I know what I was talking about. I was going somewhere with that.
Don't say anything. I'm just going to be quiet.
I lost it again. Okay, let me think. It's good, actually. It's good. It's good. Oh, shoot.
He can get it. He usually recovers pretty fast from this. Faster than I would, actually.
A lot of times inbreeding fixes itself. A lot of people, they see the negative effects of inbreeding, but by inbreeding them and seeing birds that are lethargic, showing the negative signs, inbreeding depression, a lot of times there's always some birds in there that are actually better than the others. By breeding to the healthier birds, the birds with good vigor, you can overcome the negative effects of inbreeding. You can overcome inbreeding depression even though you're starting to see signs. And then the good news is that inbreeding depression isn't inheritable. It's not passed to the next generation. So that's a good thing. So there's ways to get through the negative sides of inbreeding by understanding how to do it. It's not the death sentence to your strain as you think it is. A lot of people are afraid of inbreeding. They avoid it at all costs because they're afraid of the negative sides of it. But if they understood what those negative sides actually are telling you and how to work through it, it's the best way to actually clean up a strain. Just got to understand when to do it, how to do it, how much to do it. If you do it wrong in breeding, you can screw up a strain. It's not something you want to do haphazardly. I have a whole program and course inside the Breeders' Academy, and I suggest that when you join the Breeders' Academy, it's one of the ones you first read. Read that whole program. I'll tell you the pros and cons, how it works, what to do, what not to do, how it works in the Founders Program, the whole bit. To me, inbreeding, I don't call it the secret, but everybody runs from it. They're scared of it. And I don't call it the secret because inbreeding is not a secret. Everybody knows a lot about inbreeding. They know it exists, so I don't make it the secret, but it's an important element in any program. And we're going to talk about this because a lot of the programs we're going to talk about, I see no inbreeding whatsoever. So I know right away they're failing.
And we use it as a tool, Kenny, too. We don't use it really as a method. We use it as a tool. And give them a little bit of nugget, just a little bit. I'm not going to go a little farther than what I'm going to say. But a lot of people think you inbreed, you make these hideous three-eyed, four-legged mutant ninja
That's a
turtle
mutation.
things, you know?
Most new mutations are spontaneous.
Inbreeding doesn't make nothing.
No.
It just shows you what's already in there, guys.
That's right. Which is what you want. Now, a lot of people look at inbreeding. We're going way off tangent here. That's okay. A lot of people look at inbreeding, they'll do their inbreeding, and because they see faults in the offspring, they're like, okay, these guys suck, there's something wrong with them, it doesn't work. They missed it. Yeah, when you do inbreeding, especially in the beginning of a family that's started from unrelated birds or mixed birds or crosses, you're going to see huge variation. You're going to see good birds, bad birds, mediocre birds. It's the few that are good that you want to move forward with. It doesn't mean just because you see some bad birds that they can't handle the inbreeding or they're not good birds or there's something wrong with them. They totally miss what the inbreeding was meant to be and how it's supposed to work and what it's telling you. They're not doing their breedings, they're not using the methods, and they're not deciphering from the results they're getting. They're not able to tell what those results are telling them and what direction they should go from there. And that's what we teach inside the Breeders' Academy, and that's what the Founders Program is all about, is understanding what those results are, looking at the offspring, saying, okay, this is what the offspring are showing me. This is what it's telling me. This is the direction I go next. because you are going to see, especially in the first few stages of the founded program, you're going to see a lot of variation. You're going to see a lot of good and bad and the ugly. You're going to see a lot of genetic diversity. You're going to see everything. That's all.
In the Breeders' Academy, we show you how to look for the signs.
We show you how to decipher from the results that you're getting. Is that the right word? Decipher?
Well, show you what you're seeing.
Yeah, it's giving you a glimpse at what's within the genome of the birds that you're working with, but it's also showing you the different directions you can go. It's about narrowing down the bloodline so that you can get to a point when they're uniform, consistent, and they're a true foundation. If you're seeing variation within the offspring, then it's not a true foundation line.
People scared to death of it, but we go back, the old legendary breeders, they had this stuff figured out. They didn't get on a horn and broadcast it. They put it down. It's like the old guy done me way back. He was a great breeder. I'd pick his brain anytime that I get a chance. I'd never heard of inbreeding. I was just a kid.
Yeah.
Didn't know what it was. And he said, whatever you don't ever inbreed. A great breeder told me that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to do that. Later on, his sons was laughing at me over it because that's exactly what he was doing. He was using inbreeding to make his birds consistent and look alike the whole time. And I was like, really? And they, yeah, that's the way he done. And then I got checking into it. And the old man really put me on with the inbreeding because a lot of these older breeders was doing it and they wasn't telling nobody about it. They wasn't teaching it.
Robert Bakewell, which I call him the father of selective breeding, because before him, we were doing what we see a lot of people doing today. We're just mixing bloods. We're just breeding this and that, experimenting. We're never getting anything that repeats itself. Never know what we're going to get. Everything's always unpredictable. He turned breeding into a science. He taught us that we can actually create from unrelated animals with contrasting characteristics, variations. From that, we could create a strain, we could create a breed, we could create a variety that's not only uniform and consistent, but predictable. And one of the methods that he really taught us, because everybody was afraid of it then too, was inbreeding. He made inbreeding popular. He showed everybody the tool that it really was. So if you really want to learn about selective breeding and understand the breeding process, check out Robert Bakewell, because he's the father of selective breeding. Because Tony Seville, him and I go back and forth. There's a lot of things we agree on, especially when it comes to type and conformation and color and the structure of the bird and why the bird's built the way it is. But when it comes to breeding, him and I are quite different, especially when it comes to inbreeding. I've known him a long time. We still go back and forth. He just doesn't see it. We get to the point where we're harassing each other about it. But he's just totally against inbreeding. And Robert Bakewell said, you cannot create a new breed, you cannot create a new variety or a proper strain unless there's some inbreeding involved. It just will not happen. How do you think we got all these breeds? How do you think we got all the breeds of dogs and everything? Inbreeding had to take place. There had to be some form of inbreeding to get it to the point when we concentrate the genes so much they're repeating themselves. You're not going to get that from line breeding all by itself, because you're trying to line breed a bird that's not ready to be line bred because there's so much genetic diversity, a lot of variation. He's going to be throwing all that in his offspring. You're never going to know what direction to go every time you breed him to his daughters because you didn't clean him up first. Yeah, I just get worked up when people put down inbreeding, or I see some of these methods that we're going to eventually talk about that have no inbreeding. This outline, we just started number 2. By the time we get to the breeding programs, it's going to be summertime, okay? But we're having fun. We're talking, we're chatting, we're answering questions. Yeah, we're having a good time.
Yeah, we're getting there slow, but we're having a conversation about it. That's the reason I think a lot of the viewers likes the show, because they want to be involved in the conversation. And I think it's great the way we've been doing it.
What keeps me sane is this is the conversation that I was hoping it would be. We're more focused, I guess you could say, with the Masters Class videos. We do make a conversation out of it, but
we do get through it.
The Masters Class video is good because we are so focused. It is a conversation. I do turn it into a webinar. They're really good. So maybe that's how we have to think about it, Frank. This is more of a conversation. We'll hit our bullet points the best we can. At least we're answering the question. I think people are enjoying it. If they really want really good instruction, they really want to understand the breeding process, then they got to go in the Breeders' Academy and get the Masters Class videos. That's how we're going to look at it.
Yeah. On these questions, me and Kenny's replying to something. A lot of times we pause a lot within it because We have to. We have to say it a certain way. To like Kenny was telling me a while ago, watch it, back up a little bit, Frank. Stop right there. We really got to watch it. But now with the masterclass videos, we can just let it all go. We can just let it all hang out there to say what we want pretty much.
Nacho's saying, Kenny, do you have pictures of your black pearls? I do have some, but I think they're better now than they were the last couple of years. So I think they're the best they've ever been this year. So I take all my pictures in the spring. The grass is starting to grow. That's when I mow the grass, make everything look good, and put the birds on string walks for pictures. And I'm going to try to get as many pictures of my black pearls this year so I can start showing them off. Sometimes I get busy and forget. I keep putting it off to the point, and then all of a sudden,
There's no more grass.
It's all dirt out there, and then the feathers start looking crappy, and then I say, wait till next year.
Those pictures are time consuming now, I'll tell you. Because we'll be on the yard, Amanda will be feeding them, and I'll be over there taking pictures. When she's, are you going to do anything today? And I'll look down. I've been there 45 minutes, but it gets a lot of the feeding done.
Lee's saying, how often should you inbreed? I think you remember, we should get together, do a coaching call so we can talk about that. The fact you're asking me that question, I don't know if you looked over the Founders Program yet.
Yeah, if you look over the Founders Program, you'll see.
So we were talking about you must have a strong desire to improve and perfect your strain. Frank, a true breeder, and the way I look at it is they're never satisfied with the way the birds are. We talk about this all the time. There's always room for improvement. No matter how good they are, I'm always looking for ways to improve my birds, always.
We're never going to get that perfect 100% bird. Every breeding season, we strive for it. Even though we strive for it in our hearts, we know we're never going to have that perfect bird. Somewhere on that bird is something wrong with him. You have to do the best you can. As long as you've had your birds and as long as I've had mine, you'd think that we'd get them to a certain point and that'd be it. We couldn't go no further with them. But even we was talking the other day, if it's this much, that's that much. You can call them better. But I say it every year, just like you do. These are the best stags and pullets that I've ever raised in my life. How do you do that every year? Every year they look better, but I just don't think there's ever an end to it. I think as long as you're involved with it, you're doing what you're supposed to do, they'll always improve, regardless of how good you get them, really.
That's the fun of it. You're going to see the most change, the most improvement in the first few stages of the Founders Program. The first part we call the seed fowl, the Adam and Eve stage. The second part is the transformation stage, because there's so much change that happens. From each generation, you're going to see huge changes because we're cleaning up all that variation. We're cleaning up the different bloodlines that are in there. But when you get to the foundation, it can be almost boring because the changes are subtle. It's not as fast, but you still should be seeing changes. You're still looking for birds that are better than their parents. Even when they come from a really good foundation, you're still going to see subtleties. You're going to see things that make them better than their parents, and those are the ones you're going to breed to. And so you're always looking for ways. Let's put it this way. Even when you think you're there and you've created a really good foundation, it's a balancing act. We talk about it all the time, that if you were just to relax and just say, okay, I'm just going to breed them to maintain them. If you're not paying attention, they can go in the wrong direction pretty quickly. And before you know it, they're nothing what they were. So you have to maintain them because they'll always revert to the wild. They'll always revert to their natural state. They're always going to want to go in that direction. That means size, shape, conformation, color, you name it. Temperament, performance, production ability. They're always going to want to revert to the average, to the wild, to the natural. And it's your job to keep selecting to maintain that level of intensity, that level of quality, and to find ways to improve them each generation. So, yeah, I think we're always looking for ways to improve them.
Yeah. And two, I've said this many times, it takes a good breeder to make a good quality strain, but it takes a great breeder to keep them that way.
Oh,
I honestly believe that.
Yeah. Are you as cold as I am? I'm freezing.
I know you keep feeling my hands. Are my hands cold?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. It's a little. That one
I'm the
thermals.
opposite in here. If I hadn't turned my heat down when I said I did, I'd probably be out of here by now because it's pretty warm in here and I barely got it on.
When I first sat down, I was wearing shorts and this t-shirt, and all of a sudden it just got cold. What the heck happened?
I am wearing shorts.
So I ran in there before Frank got on. I put thermal pants on, thermal shirt. You can see the shirt and long pants. And now I'm better than I was, but yeah, it's a little chilly in here.
Yeah. I'm still in my
What's the
work
temperature
clothes.
out there today, guys?
I didn't look, but it was fine
pretty
today,
warm.
but it just got cold. The sun went down, it got cold.
Yeah. It was 47 when I went to work this morning, so I'm thinking it's down in the 40s right now.
Yeah, that's about what it is here.
Yeah.
Probably should wrap it up here.
So much for keeping it short tonight, huh? That was my request.
Oh, hey,
he didn't say that, though.
I told you now.
Yeah.
You just had to tap me in, and we go to commercial, and you're gone.
I can't do that to the listeners.
You're gonna do that for the listeners.
I was. And I'm like, no, I can.
Oh yeah, you found your
I finally
shirt.
remembered.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Kenny and Nancy sent me a Bigfoot shirt. I've actually wore it before. It's just I forgot to mention it. I had it on under a shirt like this.
Oh, okay.
You know?
Yeah.
But Amanda washed it, and it was time for the show. And I said, "Where is my shirt that Kenny and Nancy sent me?" And she said, "It should be in your clothes." I went through the clothes. I checked. I couldn't find it. I was upset. I went back in. We checked and never could find it. And finally, when we found it, it was inside of another shirt folded up with it.
Oh,
So I had to go through all of them to find it, but I wasn't going to stop till we found it.
Persistence is key.
That's right.
That should be in the breeders thing. Persistence is key.
It is. It's patience and persistence.
It is,
We're going to
isn't it?
talk about that. I just don't know when we're going to get to it. Could be next month for all I know. Jeez. We didn't get very far at all today, but I'm telling you.
Springtime, somewhere around springtime.
I want to thank everybody for joining us. Your questions, your comments really do shape the show, and I really appreciate that. I want to thank Nancy and Frank for joining me. I've always wanted it to be a conversation. That's what it's turning out to be. So, anything you want to say, Frank, before we get going?
I'm going to let it go this time. I'm not going to say it.
I wasn't thinking about that, but
I've
yeah.
been good today.
I'll say something. Be kind to your male person.
Give them lots of tips.
Give them some cookies.
Got a rough job.
We always enjoy those cookies, especially when we've been out there for 10 hours and we're all starving. And we can smell everybody cooking dinner and we're like, oh, I'm so hungry. And then somebody comes out with a box of cookies for you. Oh my gosh, we are just happy campers when you do that. Be good to your male people this Christmas. And keep your porch lights on, for heaven's sakes. It's dark out there.
Is this a post office endorsement or this is chickens?
Then I guess we'll see you next time.
Okay. So we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for joining us. We had a good time. See you later.
Bye.
See you guys.
Okay. Thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you again for joining us on the Bred to Perfection podcast show. This show was brought to you by the Breeders Academy, where by becoming a member, you can increase your knowledge of breeding, advance your skills as a breeder, and take you and your fowl to the next level.
We can also show you how to create a strain from hybrid crosses or mongrel flocks and help you to create, maintain, and improve your present strains. We urge you to check it out. You have nothing to lose and you can cancel anytime.
To join us at the Breeders Academy membership website, go to www.breedersacademy.com.
Best of all, I'll be there to help you every step of the way.
While you're checking out the Breeders Academy, make sure to sign up for our newsletter, The Breeders Bulletin. We provide a lot of free bonus materials and some great information that will take you and your fowl to the next level. Well, that's it for now.
We hope you join us next time for another episode of Bred to Perfection. We'll see you later.
Bye. Welcome to the after show. This is the part of the show that doesn't exist. What happens in the after show stays in the after show. If you've mentioned to your friends about the after show, which happens from time to time, no worries. Just tell them not to let out our little secret area of the show. Enjoy! I have a question on blues, but I think that is in the next segment, correct?
We're going into them now, so let's just start with blue. So fire away.
Okay, so my question is, in American gamefowl, correct me if I'm wrong, Kenny, but in American gamefowl, the blue can't be duplicated. But in the domestic world, there are some breeds of chickens that the blue can be duplicated.
My understanding is, and my experience, because I used to raise blues, is it's an incomplete dominant trait and you can't reproduce blue because you get different variations. You get the splash, you get the black and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So why can you in the domestic world, but you can't in the American gamefowl?
You can't. It's not the same gene. Those people are just calling lavender blue.
Yeah, lavender is recessive, but they do call that blue.
That's right, but it's a different gene. It's not the same gene. With the actual BL mutation, you can't.
Okay, then how can they duplicate the blue laced Wyandottes?
They don't get 100% blue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's the
Go ahead.
general rule then in all blues. It cannot be duplicated to the point where you can have it come generation after generation cloning.
That's right. Yeah, you can't get 100% blues from breeding blues if you're working with this blue gene. Now, that doesn't mean there couldn't be a new mutation pop up. And on that subject, I know someone who breeds a breed called La Flèche, and he recently just had some blues pop out. There's never been blue added. All of his birds were black. We don't know what it is. It looks like normal blue, but it's not behaving like it. He's going to do test matings with those. They're all males. He didn't get a hen. He got 3 males, which is suggestive, was not proof of anything. He's going to breed those back and see what happens. He may have a new blue mutation. Mutations can happen. It's just that 9 times out of 10, people are mistaking what they're getting. They're either calling lavender blue, or sometimes on those blue-laced Wyandottes, the splash don't look all that different from the blue because it's just that lace on the end. And where it's melanotic is what that lace is, the actual gene that's making that lace, that's making the pattern gene form the lace. Sometimes the splashes in those don't look that different than the normal blue. They're not always white-laced blues when they're splashed. Although sometimes the white-laced red, as in white-laced red Cornish, Jubilee Cornish, or white-laced red Wyandotte, sometimes are just true breeding lines of splash. But all the big breeders I knew over in England who developed those, and in Germany, they produced the typical 1-to-1 ratio. So they got blues, they got splashes, and then they got black-laced reds, which were my absolute favorite because they weren't golden-laced. They were black-laced red. Beautiful.
Brian, when it comes to blues, just follow my train of thought here because I have to explain it because you and I talked about this before.
Sure.
My school of thought and what I was taught through the years from mentors and books, and quite a few books, matter of fact, was that blue was a intermediate color of black and white. And you were telling me that's not exactly true, that yes, black and white can produce blue, but blue already had to be in the white to make that happen. And I understand that because a lot of people are thinking this way. Now,
I know.
When you look at the snapdragon flower, and what they do is they breed a red flower with a white flower, and they get the pink. And that's an intermediate color of the two. Why isn't that the same thing with blue when it comes to chickens breeding black and white? You would seem that it would be the same thing.
It's just not working that way. White are knockout genes. In the snapdragon, the white is the absence of red, and that's the homozygote. So the white bred to the red, and it's a partially penetrant dominant. So what the white is doing is knocking out part of the red and making a pink. But with this, we're talking about something completely different. Now, that's exactly what blue does, because if you think about what blue is, the homozygote is a splash bird that's more white than it is blue. You breed that white to a blue, and the intermediate is blue. But that does not apply to recessive white, which is a knockout gene and either removes the black or leaves the black there if it's heterozygous, or you're dealing with dominant white, which also is a knockout gene. So you're not looking at something that is a dilution. You're looking at something that's a knockout. It removes it. Your dilution is blue and done. The homozygotes of those are nearly white. That is working like the example with the peas, but recessive white and dominant white are completely different functions.
I believe you, and I'm not questioning you, but I just think it's funny because every time I've tried it and other people have tried the same thing when they bred the white with the black and they got the blue, you and I have been talking about this quite a while, that white can hide, you have the dominant white, you have the recessive white, but you also have whites that hide many different color patterns, like the Dom and the Colombian. Yeah. What was the chances of us finding the right white that had the blue in them that produced the blue from the black and white?
None, because almost all whites carry blue.
Oh, really?
Remember how I've been saying throughout, on the one hand, I've been saying the old breeders who didn't know genetics bred all white chickens together to make their white strains. Well, a splash coming out of anything that was blue to them was a white chicken, so it got bred into whites. So almost all white chickens carry blue. Then the other thing is that when you're trying to make a good white, like when they figured out that you could take dominant white and combine it with enough things and get a good true white dominant white, one of the main things they used was blue, because the more you can dilute the eumelanin, the better you can get the dominant white to make it black. And so that way, if your bird is blue under the white and you get some of that flecking, this is what my grandfather did. He always made sure there was blue in his dominant white game lines because that way it didn't turn out so often as a black feather or black spotting in the tail. If it's blue, it's lighter, it doesn't show up as much. So almost all white birds carry blue, so it's not uncommon. It's why the myth has persisted. It's why even observant, intelligent people can believe an old wives' tale.
I think he just complimented me. If you are enjoying the show and would like to learn more, I encourage you to join me at the Breeders Academy. By becoming a member, I can help you to achieve the competitive advantage.